Welcome back to the Relentless podcast, where I'm always trying to provide you with information, experts in their appropriate field, and stories that can help you live a relentless life, thriving in your physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And with each guest, they're always going to be offering, like I said, information either from a field that's needed for us to do that, or, as in today's episode, an individual that I have either met through my everyday life or come across through this amazing network that we have in social media and group think that we have. It's a wonderful thing. It can be anyway. And that is how I came across LeeAnn. LeeAnn, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. I love your topic. Yeah.
We actually met in a networking group through Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And, for those who don't know, I'm a massage therapist, a licensed massage and bodywork therapist. So the whole health paradigm is my shtick. That's what I'm always talking about and learning about and sharing about. And I also turned 47 this year.
Congrats.
Thank you. So, with what I do and what I'm always learning and sharing with my clients, of course, menopause came up on my radar. And we're going to talk about menopause, midlife. We're going to talk about being an entrepreneur. We're going to be talking about traveling, doing new things, all of that rolled up in today's episode. So just to give a little background of my introduction into this first topic, which is midlife and menopause, like I said, as a body worker, I have a very interesting view of the world through my clients' experience. And I learn so much through what they tell me, what I see and feel in their health story and their health paradigm. And so, of course, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen some of my clients before, during, and after this transition. So watching them go through it, I'm like, well, I need to start reading up and studying on that, because I had not at this point had any symptoms. I'll tell you more of my story later. But so I started looking, and, the first thing I do is go to the experts. So I found a couple people online, 3 practicing OBGYNs and an endocrinologist that I thought was a middle of the road information and had their hands on people. That's really important to me, not just to be an intellectual.
Right.
So I started following them and reading the comments under their comment section. And I was like, oh my goodness. Because I've gone through a lot with my own health and earned my way to a healthy body and mind. And I just got to the point after reading some of these comments of like, am I just screwed? Is this it? That's what it feels like, So I'm like, I had to literally take a break from listening to them and reading the comments, because I am my emotional state stays very high. I'm very active, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And my husband was like, something's different with you the past couple of days. And I'm like super... for the first time, like, is this out of my control, Wow. Yeah. And I've also, my personal experience, tried to not take medications unless absolutely necessary, because I was so sick as a child. Of course, the biggest topic that comes to mind when you're talking about midlife and menopause is hormone therapy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to call it. There seems to be like they're dropping the R now. There's something new every day.
Right.
So how I came to meet you, all of that to say, I was looking for people and stories that may have done it a different way, or may have used a different combo of things to have an end result that aligned more with my idea of how I wanted to live and be.
Yeah.
So I just put it out there in the group that we were in. If anyone had been or currently transitioning through this phase, or have transitioned fully and chose not to go on hormone therapy. And that's how you came across my radar. So I'm 47. Do you mind telling everyone how old you are?
Not at all. I'm 56.
Looking back in your health paradigm, what kind of led you into the decision to not take advantage of hormone therapy?
Yeah. Well, I have a similar viewpoint in the sense of I really just don't like to take medications that I don't need to take, right? I'm very much about listening to, and this is because of years of not doing this, but listening to my body, understanding that anytime I'm in pain or discomfort or something is shifting, then instead of thinking, well, let me just pop a pill and I'll fix it or make it go away, instead saying, what is my body telling me? And how can I pay attention to this and how can I love it in a different way? That's been a lifelong journey in many ways. My kind of intro to menopause had a really abrupt beginning because of that philosophy, because I had been on hormonal birth control since I was 16. So for more than 30 years. And I one day was like, I don't like taking drugs. I've been on this forever. And I had asked doctors over the years, I've been on this forever. Is this good for me? Is it okay? And the doctors were always very, don't you like knowing when your period is? No big deal. Oh, it is this. And they were so blasé about it. And at the time, I was not a good health advocate for myself. And so I kind of said, okay, well, they're the doctor. And so at one point I was like, I've just been on birth control for too long. I don't need it. I'm not worried about getting pregnant. I'm not, I don't have a partner. I'll just go off. And because they have been so blasé about it, I just stopped. I didn't think it'd be a big deal. And what I learned was, holy smokes, that's a big deal to have been feeding my body essentially hormones for 30 years and then just to stop at cold turkey. So that kind of started some perimenopause syndrome symptoms that, started some hot flashes, that started this whole cocktail of things that you typically hear about when you hear about menopause. And then I read the book Beyond the Pill. And I realized, oh my Lord, I didn't realize that what the pill was essentially doing and how it works and all those things. And so that started opening my eyes. And then I started talking to different doctors. And then I started really just paying attention to what was happening in my body. And on the advice of a good friend, I found a naturopath. And the naturopath was like, hey, why are you fighting your body? I had also, by the way, in between gone to and found one doctor who I thought we were aligned, and she was giving me the hormones. So I did the one round of the pellets. You can see me pointing to my butt. Yeah.
Yep. I know. I feel it every day.
So I did a round of that, and she had me also on estrogen, and those had effects. And when I found the naturopath, I just liked her approach, because her approach was, this is a natural process that your body is going through. Why fight it? Why replace the things that are gone if you don't necessarily need to? Some people need to, whatever. But for you, maybe we can just find some supplements that will help the symptoms become less egregious and less aggressive, and let you support your body in this transition instead of kind of fighting it and trying to take back what's gone. And I just like that approach so much better. It felt more aligned with me, and it felt like, I'm getting older. It's menopause. Doesn't have to be drama. In the comments and all you see, and it's funny because now I still see a lot of that. Oh, it's terrible. And you're just going to suffer. There's almost like two camps, right? There's the take a pill for everything so you don't have to feel anything. And then there's suck it up. You're just going to have to suffer.
Right.
And I'm like, why can't there be in everything, but especially in menopause, a sacred third that says, I might be uncomfortable, and let's figure out why I'm uncomfortable and figure out how I can help my body through this transition.
100%. And I agree. As with everything, somewhere in the middle of the road is probably the best place to be.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions from all of that. So you were started on birth control at 16.
Yes.
May I ask why?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say two main reasons. One, it was, and let's just acknowledge that this would have been in the 80s, right? 85-ish.
Yep.
To do my math. And at that time, if you were a teenage girl who had any desire to have sex, you got on the pill. It was not even a question. So it was that was me. Right. I was, discovering my sexuality and didn't want to worry about getting pregnant. And there we go.
Yep.
Added to that, the big sale at the time was that idea of, and then you'll know when your periods are, and they won't be as bad, which after reading Beyond the Pill, I now realize too, man, I was sold my whole life on this, buffet of symptoms that have to come along with your period that also don't necessarily have to happen and are indicative of hormonal imbalances or things that you could do to I could have could have been nurturing my body my entire life instead of just sucking it up and saying, well, I guess I'm on my period, so I'm just going to have bad cramp.
Did you happen to see recently, I think it was Washington Post came out with kind of like a hit piece on professionals and individuals that were offering another way of birth control, which is, watching your cycle and temperature, different things. But they came out with this big, masses of women are coming off birth control due to misinformation, is what they're dubbing it. So they pulled out, and not only did they say that, they politicized it and said right-wing people are pushing women to come off birth control. So they made it political, number one, and they offered up incorrect information by basically disqualifying people's experiences from having bad side effects on birth control. So it's a very disheartening, in my opinion, review of other people's experiences. But then another prominent doctor, similar to Dr. Brighton, came out, and she has a book called Your Brain on Birth Control.
Oh.
She was like, no one's saying not to use it because there's an absolute, and we're very grateful for the way to use it appropriately, but also it comes with these things. It may come with these things. And that was always my question, because I was married at 21, which is very, very young. And I was on it for a little bit, but I did not feel good on it. So I came off very quickly because, going back to my experience, I don't like medication. I didn't want to have to be tied to it.
Yeah.
So she's offering up information about what happens when you are on it for those 3 decades. And then that's what I started connecting is what happens to the female brain and the female body that is on this substance for 3 decades or more and then enters menopause.
Yeah.
Because that's not being asked. Like, what is your body and brain like when you present into that state?
Right.
If you cycled naturally, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
So you started on 16 for the regular reason, which is an acceptable reason. During those 3 decades that you were on it, when you would go get refills or have your checkups, were you ever offered up, hey, how's this working for you? Are you having any side effects from it? Or any information other than, here's your refill?
It would be, when I get my annual, OBGYN, it would always be like, are you having any problems? Right. So it's problem focused, right? And it's like, well, I'm not having any problems, right? I haven't gotten pregnant from it. And, my period is regular, like clockwork. So it's like, no, that's not a problem. But I think and that's part of why I stayed on it so long, because the medical establishment and the doctors that I trusted and was going to were so like, great, if you're not having a problem, we don't need to look at it. And there's this other layer of, but should I really be on it? And what is the long-term effect of me being on it? And does this really make sense for my body? And those are the questions that nobody was asking or talking about, because it was just like, you're not having a problem, check. All right, let's, do the PAP and see if you've got cancer. And beyond that, then, we're out.
Not yet. Anyway.
Not yet. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the big things that I try to get people to understand is health is not the absence of sickness or disease. It's the ability to recover once you go through them, because they're gone. And how long is an episode of the thing, and how exacerbated are the symptoms? So moving into that time period when you decided to take yourself off birth control, and then you found the naturopathic doctor, did they do blood work and actually get your fingerprint or footprint of where all your numbers were, that what led her to then help your body and support it in the way that was necessary for you?
Yeah, they both. So I had kind of like the in-between, and then I had the woman who I still consult with, the naturopath. And yeah, we did a lot of blood work to like look at the levels, look at what was happening. And then with the naturopath, we really looked at, okay, let's try these supplements that are all, natural and plant-based. And, let's try that for 30, 60, 90 days. Let's see how you feel, what happens. And then we'll do more blood work. And so it was a nice balance, the scientific part, and then me also getting much more in tune with my body and how do I feel, and does this support me in having less hot flashes and all those things. And I will say, once I started working with her, menopause was a breeze.
Unintended, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, and I still will get occasionally, I don't even call it a hot flash. I call it a hot flush.
Yeah.
It almost just feels like I'm blushing, and it's 30 seconds long, and it's fine, and it goes away, and it's like, okay, that was no big deal. I mean, that even happens in life when you're not in menopause.
That's my thing. Like, do we expect to come to this big event in life and not have any like felt sensory experiences? Because looking back, and you can go on any Facebook group, everybody's talking about it all the time. People have horrible issues, even on all of the things. I'm like, why are we expecting us now have lived and put in the miles, of life to not have anything that we feel uncomfortable with, So
I mean, that speaks to a bigger issue, right? Of the, we don't want to be uncomfortable. And, one of my mentors has a great saying, he's like, people will go to the doctor to get the pill so they can stop feeling the pain and be able to go back to the thing that caused the pain in the first place, because they're masking it with the drug. And it's like, and we do that in life. Like, I don't want to feel this, so make it so I don't have to feel that anymore. And we do it through pills, we do it through stopping relationships, we do it through not having uncomfortable conversations, we do it through, going left instead of right. Like, we do it through eating, the cake instead of the avocado, which I do a lot, but whatever.
Yeah.
But it's because we don't like being uncomfortable.
Another thing is, one of the worst things that could happen to you is for your symptom to go away and you had nothing to do with earning that new feeling.
Right. And understanding what, it's interesting. I worked with one of my mentors for a long time around this idea of instead of fighting the pain, I don't know if I'm going to describe this scenario the right way, but there's a scene is it Little Miss Sunshine? There's a scene where there's a kind of the troubled kid and he's sitting off to the side, like they're on the side of the road and he's gone down the hill and he's sitting there and he's just like, and, the parents and the people are, they're like, come on, move, and they're kind of yelling at him, like, you need to do this, you need to do, and he's just sitting there. And then the girl protagonist in the movie goes over and she just sits and just puts her arm around him. And she doesn't say anything, and she just is with him. And my mentor used that as the example of, I was having at the time pain in my knee. I had a tweaked meniscus, and I was very like I can't run and I can't do this, and what is this? And I don't, kind of like, I don't deserve this. I didn't do anything wrong. Like, and I was kind of fighting. And he's like, what if instead of fighting this and trying to fix it, you just were with it? And you said, what do you need? What are you trying to tell me? And ever since then, anytime I have some sort of ache or pain or whatever, I kind of go, okay, what are you trying to tell me? What is it? What do you need? What do you need? Okay, I love you. I'm here. What do you need? And invariably, it'll be like, oh, I need to adjust this activity. I need to take more magnesium. I need to stretch more. I need to adjust my shoes. I need to try a different activity. Like, your body is telling you all this information, but we so often just want to get through it or over it instead of understanding it.
Exactly what a symptom is there for. It's it's the only way your body can communicate to you that there is a So if we shut that down, then we lose communication and we end up with a bomb later, where there was a little chink in the armor. We shut the system down, there becomes a bomb later.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like I'm saying, like, hormone therapy is like the cure-all, is what it seems like. But then another thing that promoted me to start looking at this is I would have clients not having listened to anything I said or what they needed to be doing during the week or with strengthening and losing muscle mass left and right. They would go on hormone therapy because they're just promised it's this cure-all for pain and, joint issues. And they would feel really good for a few weeks, probably because they had an uptick of hormones, obviously. But if you've earned, bad posture over the last 30 years. That's not going to be done away with a pill. So now I'm starting to see providers say, well, it takes a while for these things to work. But with your experience as well. So you go to this doctor that has a more holistic approach and supporting the body, and as in not covering symptoms, vitamins and minerals, different things that are truly building blocks of cellular, healing. So what was that journey like? How long did it take? What did you feel like? Did you see effects in your sleeping patterns? Do you remember that little time frame before things regulated?
Yeah. Well, I feel like it probably took us, I would say probably 6 months to get the kind of like final cocktail together, which we would make minor adjustments after that. But I would feel about 6 months to try to just pay attention. And it was a pretty easy process, right? It's like, I feel better when I do this. I don't feel as good when I do this. I feel like, this one helped and, et cetera. And the thing that was always going in the back of my head was, am I going to have to be now am I going to be on supplements instead of drugs for the rest of my life? Am I swapping one for the other? And as recently as, when did I start doing it? It's probably been a good 6 months now. I kind of ended up tapering myself off of everything. So I've been fully in menopause for 2, maybe 3 years now. And so I kind of, we had the cocktail and we made some adjustments and we made some more adjustments. And then finally at one point I was like, I'm going to just see what happens if I taper off. And then now I just take vitamin D, B12 and vitamin C, and that's it. Yep. And that's been really great. Because the other thing I focused on this when COVID happened. Instead of freaking out like a lot of people did, I said, how do I become more vital? How do I honor my body and get my body stronger so that in the face of, I'm rarely sick. I've had the flu one time in my entire life. And that was before, it was 2019, November 2019. So right before COVID happened. But it was like, how do I, in the face of this thing, make it so that even if I get it, I'll be fine? And the first place I looked was sleep. And so, because I sleep, it's that foundational element, it makes everything better, everything better. And so when I focused in on that, it just made a difference in all of the markers and in all of the things.
Well, you've pointed out one of the first building blocks into what I believe and science shows is the key things that keeps us healthy no matter what stage we go through. Because if you look back into history, we didn't have all of those things to help us along the way. And there were a lot of really, really old grandmas back then. We're now just living to 80 and 90, by the way. But when you start implementing standards for yourself that get your body, like you said, to where it's resilient and ready for anything, that to me is your biggest ROI in your health. So you focused on sleep, but I know your history a little bit. Another big thing that and you can tell us how this all started, because, you've run marathons. You've done an Ironman. I mean, come on. I would be like, I had asthma. That was one of my big things as a kid. Even though I'm super healthy now, I still have those, I always say my little asthma lungs. To me, that seems so daunting. So if I heard someone had done not just the half but the whole and finished the Ironman, I and most people would say, oh, well, I'm sure they were an athlete growing up, and it's pretty easy when you're already, when you've been training your whole life. And is that how that happened for you?
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm going to bust some myths right now. I was not athletic at all growing up. I had the opposite growing up. As a matter of fact, when I was 12, I somehow made it to the softball team in my community down in Portsmouth, Ohio, Southern Ohio. I don't know how I got on this team, by the way, but
needed bodies.
Yeah, they did. They 100% needed bodies.
Yes.
And on game days, I would get so nervous because I would worry that I wouldn't know what to do or whatever, that I would get stomach aches. And no one ever told me that that's nerves and it's okay and how to get through it. And so I quit the team because I was like, this hurts, this sucks, I can't play, I'm out. And nobody nobody ever shifted my brain about that. So I didn't do anything. In fact, I used to do, I would do like, I started later in like the 90s and the early 2000s, doing a little bit of like treadmill stuff or whatever. But I didn't run my first 2 miles until I was 40 years old. And prior to that, I used to say like, I don't run. I don't run unless someone's chasing me. And if he's cute, I stop. But then I met a woman who was like the first real person that I knew who would ever run a marathon. And I was kind of looking to shake up my exercise routine. And so I decided to sign up for this race called Urban Athlon, which is before the mud runs, but it was like, the monkey bars and the big tires and an obstacle course.
Yes.
And I always thought obstacle course sounded interesting, right? You go in between, you do different stuff. And so I convinced my friend to go with me. And she said, LeeAnn, you're going to have to run. And I was like, I think I can walk in between obstacles. And she goes, LeeAnn, it's an 11-mile course. And I was like, you're going to have to run. Like, I don't know how to run. She took me on my very first 2 miles ever. And then it was like, I didn't die. And I was like, and so then I hired a trainer and then she took me on a 3-mile run. And then it was just like building my confidence, building my thing. And so by the time I did the race, 11 miles with like 9 obstacles or something, when I crossed that finish line, I had such a different perception of myself that I was like, well, what else can I do? Half marathon isn't that much longer and there's no obstacles. That's easy. So it was like, boom, boom, stretch a little, stretch a little, stretch a little, stretch a little. So yeah.
That's how I got started.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's just a little, I think sometimes we get so caught up in, and I know I see this with clients and just with population in general, we get so caught up in the like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to be a marathoner or am I going to be an Ironman or am I going to do this? And that's too much. That's too much. That's too far. I'll never do that. First of all, if you decide you're never going to do or be something, then that's it. You never will do or be that. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to go all the way down the rabbit hole. You could just walk a block and then 2 blocks and then a mile. You could do a 5K. Then you could try a 10K. Then you can try, I started running, I increased the distance running, and then it was kind of like, why not try a triathlon? I'm like, well, I don't know how to swim, but I can learn. So, okay, I'll do a sprint triathlon. That was really fun. I'll do an Olympic triathlon. That was kind of cool. And I just kept kind of increasing by little bits, but I never, ever, I'm telling you, when I ran those first 2 miles, if you would have said, you're going to be an Ironman, I would have said, you are high. There is no way I'm ever going to do that. And then, I did. I got the tat.
So what was the draw for you to the Ironman specifically? Was it like, did you know someone that did it? So you're like, okay, I've got a personal connection there, or you're just like, I've come so far. I want to challenge myself. And that is like the ultimate.
Yeah. And just in case people don't know what Ironman is, because not everybody knows, and it's not a movie, not just a movie. It's a long form triathlon. So it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a full marathon, 26.2 mile run. That's a full iron. And you have 17 hours to do it. So it's interesting because when I started running, and before I had run a full marathon, when I was just in that kind of half marathon phase, I remember talking to a friend and she said, so are you going to do a marathon? And I was like, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about it. And she's like, that's crazy. And I said, you want to hear something that's crazy? You ever heard of an Ironman? And I told her what it was. And I was like, that's stupid. Who would even try it? And then I did a triathlon and I did a little longer. And when I started hanging out with different people, because I started training for different sports. And then all of a sudden, I knew a bunch of people who had done a half Ironman. And that seemed a little crazy. So then I did the half Ironman. And then within that group of half Ironman people, a lot of them had done a full Ironman. So it was that I started meeting people who had actually done it, who were normal, and they weren't super athletes, and they were all age ranges and all abilities and slow and fast and all of that. And so it just started to become more possible. And then especially when I did that half Iron, because I remember, I get emotional still thinking of that finish line, because it was so far away from what I thought was possible. And when I crossed that line, my next thought besides what was, what else am I telling myself is not possible? Where else am I limiting myself? And so the Ironman was like the next logical step.
And how old were you when you completed the Ironman?
Well, think about this. At my first attempt at the full, I actually didn't finish. I did the whole swim, I did the whole bike, but I missed the bike cutoff by 15 minutes. And so, let's see, I was 40. So where are we at? 24, it was 2014, 56. So I was 46 in the first attempt, did not finish. And then I took a year off and I went back 2 years later. And when I was 48, I finished the Ironman.
You are the people that make my heart say that. I knew I liked you as soon as we started talking online, seeing your stuff online. First of all, I can see it in your eyes and in your smile. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. And like you said, with those people you started hanging around, they're no one special. They didn't come from a, line of people that would be doing these things and have they don't have the genetic gifts to do these things.
No.
Anybody can do it when you start small. And that's a huge takeaway and what I tell my clients all the time, I don't care where you are. This sounds really horrible, but if you're on this side of the dirt, we can make improvement.
1,000% yes. 1,000% yes. Because it really, all of this, the health, the races, the everything, a lot of the cornerstone of it, and also with entrepreneurship, is your mindset, which I think is the cornerstone to everything in life. If you, there's that quote, I think it's attributed to Henry Ford, that whether you think you can or can't, you're right. And it's like, part of why I've been able to achieve these things and why I even created the work that I do now around living without regret is you have the choice. You can put the filter in and decide, I'm not athletic, I can't do it, I can't run. And I have, by the way, tried to run before, years before. I used to live in LA and I'd see people running out there all the time. The weather was always great and I'd go out and try and I would go way too fast and it would suck. And then I'd be like, I'm not doing this. So, I tried, but I finally had somebody show me that I could in fact do it, and just igniting that little bit of, well, you can do this. You can do this piece. Okay, I'll get comfortable by that. Okay, now I can do a little something different. But it's like you have to have a frame for yourself that I can do X so that you can get there. Because if you're saying you can't, or it's hard, or it's horrible, or it's never going to happen, or I'm not gifted, or I'm not all of this, then that's what you experience.
Right. So you brought up two things so far that are important to remind everyone about. First of all, when you started going through this transition and this phase of life, that is wonderful and amazing because you have so much more freedom and money and everything because you're not doing all the other things you do when you're young. So first of all, you focused on your sleep, which to let everyone know that doesn't know, that's not one of my clients, when you sleep is the only time that the glymphatic system of the brain is working. The glymphatic system of the brain is what cleans out all of the things that will eventually give you Alzheimer's or brain or all those things. That's one of the many reasons why sleep is so important. So during this important phase of your life, you made the decision to make sleep a priority. You also made a decision to be conscious and purposefully pick the people that surrounded you and influenced the decisions that you made on a daily basis.
Yes.
And I'm sure you can look back and maybe they're not still around now, but with social media, we can stay connected always. But when you started going on that adventure of testing yourself and pushing yourself, I know you still have relationships from that time period.
100%. 100%. I actually call this is an idea that I call crew, which is who's around you. And it's one of the pillars of my no regrets formula. And I like to think of it as who got you here might not get you there. And so there's phases of life, right? There were phases of life when I didn't know anybody who was athletic. And then I met the one woman who had run the marathon, and she and I were friends to a certain extent. And then it was like, I got in this group that was triathletes, and I think I know people flow in and out of your life for the reasons, the seasons, the lifetime. Yeah. The whatever it is. And even if they're not doing the thing that you want to do, it's I believe crucially important to just look at whether they're enhancing or detracting from your life. Because, even the people who weren't triathletes, when I said, I'm going to try the Ironman, there were for sure people who were like, that's freaking crazy. And then there were other people that were like, wow, that's cool. How are you going to do that? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, LeeAnn, you do anything you set your mind to. I know you can do it. They didn't know how, but they could at least say, I know you can do it. Mm-hmm. And those are the people you want in your life. And it's not to say surround yourself with yes men who will never question what you're doing. But it is to say, make sure that people aren't going like, I don't know, you've never been athletic and that's really hard. I don't think you can do it.
It is so key because that's what most people have, because misery loves company.
100%.
And it's especially more difficult when that person is your spouse or a parent that you're caring for in the area, or a sibling.
Yeah.
Someone really close like that. So I can't stress enough, again, going back to how you cultivated this lived experience to where now you're the age you are and have the thriving life that you have. It's because of these decisions you made back in your 30s and early 40s.
100%. And I've also been very intentional about who is in that circle. And so, I'm blessed. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but, I'm not married. I don't have, parents who are in the picture and I know those are some common relationships that can tend to affect what we believe we can do. And there's adjustments that you can make within those relationships, and they can vary from, when I talk about this with my clients, the example I use is my sister-in-law. Bless her that she's never heard me speak, but she's a detractor in some areas. And I remember having a conversation with her one time, then I told her a business idea that I had and she laughed in my face. And it sounds horrible when I say it like that. And it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, right. We have very different views on life. I value freedom. She values stability. I value expression. She values, this. And so to her, a new business idea is crazy. How is it going to work? I'm always got the crazy ideas. I'm the entrepreneur. And so I immediately thought, with her, I'll just change what I talk with her about. So now I go to her and I say, I did a keynote last week and it was amazing. And people loved the stories and they can't wait and they did this. So I tell her what's already happened that has been successful instead of what might happen. Now, my entrepreneur friends love the what might happen because we ideate, I can help you with that. They get crazy on that. So it's that a simple adjustment has taken a lot of friction out of the relationship, because now I'm not putting myself in a potentially vulnerable position to be potentially shot down. And instead, we can talk about successes, which makes everybody happy.
That is a lot of situational awareness, which I learned in a very interesting way. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So sleep, the people that you surround yourself with. And then another big part of your life has been journaling. You've been journaling for a long time, which is so interesting.
Since I was 10, FYI.
Yeah. Another huge step for people to take, especially if you're dealing with anxiety and things like that. Part of the big problem with that is when you have ideas or fears that aren't even real out in the ether, they're even more scary. But when you write things down, you're taking an intangible object and making it something real, so that you have to go back and, I can't believe I wrote that. That's not even true.
Right.
Really good way to check ourselves. So how did you at 10, don't tell us the whole story, but you had, you just had this desire to write? Did someone tell you to journal? Did someone give you that prompt, or is that just that teenage girl thing that we all kind of do? I did it for 6 months because it was not my thing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've never even thought about that. What prompted me to initially to start? I do think that at the time, being 10, it would be the late 70s. And I felt like, at least in whatever world I was in, it felt like, dear diary, it felt like something that you just kind of did. And looking back from my perspective now, I think part of it was I wasn't connected to, I mean, I had friends and I had best friends, but I didn't have a strong family relationship. And I think there was a part of me that knew it was important to capture life and kind of wanted a confidant. And it was like my own, I could write to myself and no one was going to read it. No one was going to judge it. No one was going to say anything. And I could just write whatever I wanted and it was mine. And I think that was part of me clinging to a little bit of the world that I could control.
Absolutely. And you carry that on even till today.
Even till today. There's pockets. There's a couple years in high school where I didn't write, and I really wish I would have, because there was, and I think the reason I didn't was because things were so tumultuous that like I couldn't even bear to try to get it on things. But otherwise, now I fairly religiously, about once a week, write. And I've got a container with, not container, a bookshelf with all my journals. There were 40 some years of life. So
that's amazing. So we talked about sleep. We talked about making your physical health a priority. We talked about the journaling, and then you started exploring with meditation, and it didn't go well.
It did not go well. I used to always, it's so funny because meditation is very, especially in the coach or the spiritual world, it's very, what the top people do who are successful. It's what you should do. And I felt like there was a lot of shoulds around it. And a lot of like, that I couldn't figure it out. I just didn't like it. Every time I tried it, I didn't like it. And then I was at a retreat with a friend who I really trusted, and he always meditated. And he did this little session and around kind of how to give it a try a little bit differently. Because I think what I had always, my perception of it and things I had read about had always been, you've got to clear your mind. You've got to not think about things, how you turn inward. And so I was fighting myself in it, because whenever I'd hear, the dog bark or whatever, I would be like, don't think about the dog barking. And then you're always thinking about the dog barking. And so he did this little and I also had a perception that you have to do it for, 20, 30 minutes a day. And I was like, I don't know that kind of time. So he made it simple. 10 minutes a day. Start with 10 minutes a day. And if something creeps into your mind, follow it. And don't resist it. Just follow it. Wow, I wonder if that must be Susie's dog across the street. Yeah, I love that little dog. Okay. And it's like, and then you can come back. And then something else happened. It was like that little bit of permission made it like, okay. And then the other thing I did, because then I had to find the time. So I committed that day to a 30-minute stretch of 10 minutes a day. And prior to that, I always had snoozed in the morning. Just one, but I had snoozed, which is 9 minutes long. And so I said, all right, I'm going to lose the snooze. And I'm just going to get up on the first alarm, and that'll be my 10. That'll be my 10 minutes in the morning. So I don't have to change anything else about my morning. And that 30-day commitment ended up being, I can't even remember the exact count. My Insight timer got a little off, but it was more than 1,400 days in a row.
Wow.
And now I still meditate. I did it this morning. Now I still meditate every morning.
I love it. Which goes into your morning practice.
Yeah.
Yes. So once again, we come back to intentionally setting healthy boundaries for yourself. And you are in the connection world. That's what you do for a living and what you do for people in your job. So the tendency would be, as soon as you open the eyes in the morning and feet hit the ground, what's on tap for the day? Yeah. But you learned, like, if I want longevity in this, I've got to start a certain kind of way. So tell us about your morning routine.
Yeah, I am very ritualistic and very protective about my morning routine, because I like a couple of reasons. One is, I've learned I need to take care of me first, because if I don't take care of me, then I don't have me for anybody else. It's the airplane idea, right? Put my mask on first before anybody else. The other thing is, it just feels good if I take care of me first and I do my needs and I fill my cup, and then it's like, okay, bring it on, world. I can deal with you now because I'm in a good space. So to that end, I get up now, no snooze. The real granular one is I drink a glass of lemon water to rehydrate myself. And then I meditate. Lately I've been doing a 20-minute, I know, Wayne Dyer meditation. I love Wayne Dyer. So I really like that one. I play with different ones. I like to mix that up. And then I do a gratitude journal. So what am I thankful for? At least 5 things I'm thankful for in the morning. Then I pull a power thought card. And this deck I've had now. I realized the other day, I've been pulling from this thing for like 20 years. So I just shuffle it around. It's a Louise Hay deck. And then I pull a card for the day. I do mullah beads, which is it looks like a rosary, 108. And so I just repeat a phrase. Often I repeat, it's fun, it's easy, it's light, something I want to kind of get in my head for the day. Then I go exercise. And then after I exercise, I'll do, shower, breakfast or whatever. Notice nowhere in there have I checked social media or email. I do not touch my email until around 9:30 after I've had breakfast and after I do my Wordle, when I start my business day, because I'm off and running. In fact, I don't even touch email really until more like 10 or 10:30, because I've even started my first hour in my business. I call it my power hour, and I do something for me in my business instead of email, because once I get an email, then client demand and this and that and the other and everything coming for my time. And I want to use that hour. I'm so fresh and I'm ready and creative. I write my weekly email, or I look for speaking gigs, or I write marketing materials, or I do something that will, again, serve the me of my business. Because then I'm ready to deal with everything else.
I love it. And the first thing I'm going to hear is all the moms, and I'm a mom, I have 2 children. There's no way I will never have my mornings to myself. That's not the point. The point is to set aside the time or the procedural aspect of it, which could look like for you at night when your husband is there, you say, I'm taking 30 or 45 minutes, whatever it is. I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to set out all my clothes for the next day. Yeah. You work. I'm going to set out my bag that I need to take with me. Yeah. That you mentally go to bed with zero doubt about how your morning's going to go, because the kids are going to do their own thing anyway. But when you got to get the kids to practice or to school or to whatever, sure. You have this, it brings this calm, overwhelming understanding that you have your ducks in a row. So it doesn't still look like what you just said. The point is having a thing to look like.
Right. That's exactly it. And that's it. That's such a great point. I do have the luxury of, I don't have kids. I don't even have a husband. I don't have anyone else to be accountable to in the morning. So I've been able to craft this morning in a way that works with me. And it's a lot. And I started with a 10-minute meditation. I started with not checking my phone. Anybody can do that. Yeah, can do that.
I'll just pause you right there, because I know people are thinking at how difficult it is to do all of this. Go on your phone right now, pull up the little ticker on your phone that shows you how long you've been online for the past week and what your Netflix hour watch time is. Don't tell me you don't have time. So
yes.
Sidebar.
Yes, I love it. Well, and I also I don't have, I changed my phone home screen. Doesn't have anything with any notifications except that I need to do the iOS, but that's different. The second
has all red dots.
A little bit, but I have all the message things into one thing, and most of them are set to not have a red dot. This is my text is the only one that really has that. So that I don't look at this and go there is,
because you're human, because your human capacity is someone needs me, someone needs something. But again, you're putting healthy boundaries around the 24 hours a day that you get.
Yeah.
Which is how you are able to have the outflow of work capacity that you have with intact your mental and emotional well-being.
100%. 100%.
It has to be a game plan. This does not happen perchance, or because you want it to, or because you're really well-intended, or because this is your dream. There has to be a roadmap.
Yeah. And honestly, the triathlon training had a major impact on me for that, because, especially when you get into those longer distances like Ironman, that's really nine workouts a week. You're doing each of the 3 disciplines 3 times a week. And so that becomes it's a lot. And so what I would do is every night, the night before, okay, what am I doing tomorrow? Tomorrow I'm swimming. Okay, let's get the bag with the goggles and the thing. And I write the workout a certain way and think about how long do I need to get to the pool? And, do I need to put a little bar, fill the water bottle? But like it's out so that in the morning, there's no crazy, where is this? Do I need to shoot? I'm swimming. I'm not biking. Like I don't have any of that decision craziness and everything's right there. So it's also not like, well, I'm a little tired and then I don't know if I feel like, man, I got to gather that. And I got to, no. I'm going to get up and I know what's happening. And that makes the morning also run a lot more smoothly.
Totally agree. I do the same exact thing. I get my workout clothes folded and with my shoes, everything put in the same spot. And when I wake up, if I do have that feeling like I really could sleep in today, and I'm like, but I went through all that work to put my stuff out. I can't renege on myself.
Yeah.
The war that we have with our own little don't say you deserve to sleep in. You had a really hard week.
Yeah. What? And it also gets to that point of being discerning, right? Like the why behind it. Am I, there are some mornings where I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm coming down with something. I haven't had enough good sleep. My body is tired and my body really needs to sleep for another hour. Okay. In that case, I'm not going to go work out. But if it's just like my bed.
We know the difference.
We know the difference. I don't really get it. If it's like, and then get your ass up and get going.
That's exactly what I tell my clients. When you've had a death in the family, when you have a child that's having a disorder flare up, that is the time you scale back the activity load.
Yeah.
And you don't even go work out. You run around your neighborhood cul-de-sac 5 times that day. That's it.
Yeah.
The ability to adjust and move, but you still have the process that you follow, and you don't lose that process even through those hard times. Again, it's how we get the outcome that you are experiencing.
Yes.
The only way.
Yeah.
So to reiterate, it's like we've covered the bases of all the things that you have to do to accomplish longevity and vitality by addressing each part of the mental, emotional, and physical parts of our body, because that's what's so left out, especially if we're just pushing down symptoms to get through the day.
Yes.
So addressing, having a routine, having a system, having a roadmap that you hold yourself accountable to is how you can make change in your health, in your mental acuity, and your emotional state. And you're such a great example of that. I mean, I'm always going to go back to, she's done an Ironman, but even if you haven't done an Ironman, you can accomplish so many great things with leftover energy and full emotional capacity by having these things in place.
100%.
Like you mentioned before already that, you're in business to help people connect and to help people take their businesses to the next level. So again, like with the fitness thing, my assumption was, since you did an Ironman, that you grew up as an athlete, you had athletic parents, being a successful entrepreneur. I'm sure that you it's really lucky that you had an example of entrepreneurs and successful people in business to help lead and guide you into being a successful entrepreneur, right?
No, I didn't. I mean, I had like Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and like all of those people, but I didn't know. I'm the first entrepreneur in my family. I didn't know any entrepreneurs when I started. I knew one. Let me take that back. I knew one when I started my first business years ago. But I changed the circle of who I was running around with. When I get curious about things, and then I think, okay, well, who do I know that's done something I'm considering doing? So I can talk with them about their experience. And, usually you can find somebody that's in the area or knows somebody. And then I read books, and then now you can go on YouTube or whatever. There's so much information. I used to have to go library, old school, man. Like, walk through the stacks and grab something. But it's just the getting clearer. This is actually really part of my no regrets formula. And the whole reason I created my formula was because I realized I have done all these things. Barely passed high school to top 20% of my law school class. not running, finishing an Ironman, no theater background. Last year I launched a one-woman show. Like, no entrepreneur background. This is my second business. Like, and so there's a formula that I follow whenever I want to do something different. And the cornerstone of the formula is I never want to look back and say, what if I would have tried that? I don't want to have that sense of maybe I could have done it. And there's a lot of things that I tried that I did not do well. And there'll be a lot more. And it's kind of like, well, okay, now I know. And there's a lot of things that I would have never thought that I would try, that I did try, that I actually liked, that turned into bigger things like Ironman. And so it's like, how can I avail myself of these opportunities and step into different roles and different ways of being that end up really lighting up my life?
Mm-hmm. So take us back to the track, because you just said that you were in the legal field. So how did you go from high school not going so well to going into the legal profession?
I remember in high school thinking that I might not even go to college. My grades in the second half of high school were really bad and the whole rabbit hole story I won't go down, but a lot of responsibility at home and kind of acting as the female head of household, cooking and cleaning and doing all these things. And I had this awakening one day and realized that nobody else was planning meals when they were a sophomore in high school, and I kind of rebelled. And I started drinking a lot and partying. And so that's what made my grades go way down. And then at one point I thought, I don't know if I'm even going to go to college. Like, I don't have the money. I grew up poor and my grades aren't good. And thankfully there was this professor who saw my aptitude and said, you can't not go to college. Find a way to go to college. It's going to give you so much more, A, B, C, D, E. Okay. So I go to college. I'm like, all right. I have a pretty good experience in college. And then I took this law school class. Again, law school, not on my radar. I took this law class that I had to as a requirement for my journalism degree. And the professor was a local attorney, and he and I just connected, and we would walk out of class every day. And one day he said, are you going to go to law school? And I was like, no. Why would I go to law school? Why? I go, I don't have money and I don't want to take out more loans, and I don't think I'm smart enough for law school. And he was like, you are 100% smart enough for law school. So he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he was like, famous last word, don't worry about the money. You'll get loans. Yeah,
Part of it.
Yeah. I know. But that little, every now and then someone just waters a little seed in me. And so that made me go like, oh. And then I was kind of like, wow, like I do really well advocating for people, right? Like, I figured out this, and then I teach other people how to do that. And I thought, wow, well, the lawyer is kind of an advocacy role. And maybe I could be good at it. So I did the LSAT and got into law school, and there we went.
What was your first job or did you get a job in the industry right away from after you graduated
from law school? Oh yeah, I had this great job as an associate at a boutique litigation firm, and it was great. I mean, by all standards, it was a great job. And it made me realize that I didn't want to practice law. Well, it made me realize I didn't like the area in which I practiced. Mm-hmm. I was doing product liability defense litigation for auto manufacturers.
Woo! Shiny.
Yeah. And so I thought, seatbelts and airbags. It's interesting. But I thought, well, if I did entertainment law, then I'm passionate about music, and I'd love that. And that could help the world be a better place. So if I did that, I would like practicing. So I literally packed up I lived in Columbus, Ohio at the time. I moved to LA to pursue entertainment law, and then promptly realized that, it took a year, realized I didn't like practicing law at all. It wasn't the practice, it was the actual practice of law, not the area. And then I got into sales and marketing, and it kind of started this whole other trajectory.
And when you started that trajectory, when you started that change, was there, because of, this little journey you've been on, and we'll get even more into your childhood, at that time when you decided, this isn't for me, was there a struggle on the inside? Did you feel guilty for having put all that time and money into law school? How did you feel like turning the knob to a different decision?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think since I did it in layers, it made it more palatable, mm-hmm. right? So I think if I would have gone from not practicing law or practicing law to the sales marketing, that would have felt a little too jolting, mm-hmm. and I would have wondered. But going from I'm in Columbus doing product liability law to I'm going to move to LA to pursue entertainment law was like, that's what got me out there. And then the big that I had that really just helped me decide not to practice law was I was making $15 an hour as a receptionist at my friend's office and having way more fun doing that than I had in the last couple of years practicing law. And I was like, and then I took these like temp jobs as like a paralegal, in-house, or I kind of was doing the odd job because you'll notice a theme here, did not pass the California bar the first time I took it. And so I had to take, I couldn't take lawyer jobs. I'd take these kind of like, in the area job. But by the time I did pass it the second time, that's when I had the job like, ooh, I just really don't like practicing. And that became oh snap, what do I do? And that was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was a little like, God, I spent all this time, all this money. I still owe the loans, but I had, this is actually part of my no regrets formula is to commit to yourself first. And what I realized when I kind of took a step back and said, well, why did I move? Why did I make this move? I made this move because I wanted my work to be meaningful. I wanted to love who I was working with. I wanted to love the work that I was doing in the world. And if I can take all of those factors and just apply it in a different career, that's cool because those are the factors that are really important to me. And I've never been too tied, thankfully, to identity and to like, well, I'm a lawyer. I got to be a lawyer. And I'm like, well, that was interesting.
And part of the stepping stone that you need to get to the place where you ended up wanting to be. And that's going back to the word you used earlier was discerning, just having discernment to say, this formula I have that's been working isn't working, but how can I take the same energy and the analogy of like a ship steer, if you tilt that thing a tiny bit in a different direction, you'll end up somewhere vastly different, but you still have the engine running. That's the goal.
100%.
The point people need to remember is where you may be right now, it may be like, this is not what I wanted, what I planned for. The point is not to stay there.
100%. Well, and to, it's really interesting. I just now got this. I didn't pass the bar the first time. If I would have passed the California bar the first time, I guarantee I would have taken a job practicing law 100% because I was running out of money. I was, and it was what you do. I'm a lawyer. I practice law. I've had all this time and all this. Not practicing gave me more time to not practice and to study and to do again. No one will hire you as a lawyer in California because the passage rate is so low. They won't hire you until you actually pass the bar. Mm-hmm. And so that extra 6 months let me do more self-reflection, realize them, and kind of it shook me out a little bit of the path that I thought was ahead of me. And that, it turned out, was the biggest gift ever. Even though at that time, Lord, I was pissed about that. Like, it felt very unfair and very annoying. And it's hilarious because by the time I did pass, I was like, yeah, I guess I don't need it.
Which is a reminder of how quickly that can change, like how devastating can be in a situation. And I can look back over my life and see many situations like that. For example, my husband and I went through 2008 together and we were both self-employed. It was a horrible year. We had 2 little kids.
Oh, wow.
Horrible. But it pushed me out of the career I was in into the one I'm in now, because I went back to my original compass on the inside of myself. Being a sick child, I thought I wanted to be a nurse. Ended up like, I don't want to be managing symptoms. I want to be on the other side of healthcare.
Yeah.
Never figured that out because I got married young, had my kids. And so when it happened, I went back to, all right, what is it I want to do? Yeah. I want to help people get well. I want to help. Yeah. So that's so often the inertia that we need doesn't even come from within us. It's a horrible circumstance outside of ourselves. It could be a relationship that falls apart. In 2 years, it could be the best thing that ever happened to you.
100%. And that's why what I've learned now is that when things don't happen, I didn't finish Ironman the first time. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how upsetting that was. And one of the best things that ever happened to me, because going back and doing it with that, there's a whole other experience. But my point of bringing that up again too is that now when things happen that I don't like or that seem negative or that, fill in the blank, I say, okay, what's here for me?
Yeah.
What's here for me? Yeah. What am I being shown? What can I learn from this? And look, I also don't bypass, and I'm not suggesting that at all, right? That if like I get disappointed and I go, okay, no worries. I know it's all going to work out for the best. No, I go into feeling. I get pissed. I yell. I have a damn it doll. I went,
A full expression of your experience. Yeah.
I feel the emotion and let it run through me. Because so often, especially as women, we get taught not to do negative emotion. Don't feel anger. Don't feel like, just focus on the positive. Then it's like, no, let it out. Because otherwise you get aches and pains and cancer and I'm not saying you get all those things because you deserve them or whatever. I'm just saying a lot of it is stored emotion that we're not letting ourselves express. And so if you can let yourself express it and then on the other side say, okay, what's here for me now?
If you ever want to know that connection that you just described, Gabor Mate is great at explaining it. When you suppress yourself, when you suppress your emotions, you suppress your nervous system, you suppress your immune function. That is how those things are created. And over decades of doing that, that is how you end up with, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, of why your experience is different. So you were in the law, you were in the legal world, and then you started making a shift. And how in the world did you end up in, so you went to sales and marketing, and then the next kind of adventure in your life was teaching people how to properly communicate via email.
Yes, there were a few stops in between that, but we can go right to there. Like, I started doing the email marketing in this current business. I started in 2011. 13 years ago. And it didn't initially start as email, but it morphed into email because what would happen is I actually originally started as a busy girl's guide to running. Because I thought, I had started running when I was 40 and maybe there's other women who want to run. They don't want to be athletes, but I'm going to open up the possibilities for that. So like motivational coach for women runners. And I would go market it. And then people would come up and say, oh yeah, I went on your website and I see how you've got that little email sign up thing. Can you help me do that? And I go, sure. Okay. And within a year, I organically had all these business and marketing clients and no running clients. No running clients. So I was like, okay, universe, what do I care about? I care about helping people. I care about having CNU. This will be the vehicle. Sure.
Yep. So what iteration of the thing is the one that fits?
Yes. And I feel like that's really the key to entrepreneurship is that, to really almost everything in life, but really entrepreneurship is that there's that, my coach calls it equanimity, right? Having the goal. I'm going to create a business. I'm going to do this. I'm going to help people with X, Y, Z, and being really connected to that so that you're moving and driving the car and you're going and being simultaneously open to the fact that other things might come along. And as long as you're not doing the shiny object syndrome, like I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that tomorrow, I'll do that. That can be a recipe for disaster. But if you're like, hey, after a year of this not working, but this other naturally working, okay, I can make that shift. And then, you're off on a different way.
And it's interesting being in the entrepreneur community in the business owner world. I've lived here. I grew up in the area that I'm in the Carolinas, but just since we've been business owners, I know people that have had 15 different businesses in the past 10 years. That's a little shiny object, but I also know people that they were doing a thing and that over time it didn't work. They made some hard decisions, maybe lost some money. I don't know. And then picked a different thing, put all their energy there, and they're off to the races and living a fulfilled, happy, and earning a good income, which is not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing. Yeah.
So after going through the email campaign, with your transitions, it's all about curating and educating and bringing people along. You practice what you preach because you, in your first, I think it was your first time you wanted to hire a coach you couldn't afford it, but you made it happen. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's actually the coach that I still work with. I don't know if you can see on my initial. She gives a star. She calls herself Superstar Activator. So she gives a star for every year that you've been with her, and I have 10 stars.
That's awesome.
Which, by the way, is a nice thing to give to your client. I have a lot of pride around it. I actually met her shortly after that first failed Ironman attempt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a dark space because I had spent the last year all this energy into the Ironman, feeling guilty when I'm training because I feel like I'm ignoring my business. When I'm in my business, I feel guilty that I'm not training. And so but I thought, well, at least I'll get this damn medal at the end and it'll all be worth it. And then I didn't even get that. And so now I had a business on life support and no medal. And it was like, what the hell am I doing with myself? And so I saw her speak and I went and talked with her, and she had this 3-day weekend coming up. It was like, I knew I'd been praying, like, I need somebody to help me put all this together and just help me with my business, not cookie cutter, but me and my talent. Mm-hmm. And when I met her, I was like, she's the one. And so I had a conversation and she invited me to this weekend that was down in Miami. And I was like, I don't have any money. I'm like, nothing. And she said, okay, well, let's brainstorm some ways you could raise the money. We had a conversation and it was really magical because within 72 hours of that conversation, I had the money for the retreat. Like it had just come through. And then I went to her retreat and I barely made it there. And I told myself, don't buy anything. Because I knew she'd probably make some offer for a year longer. And I was like, just, take all you can get. And then, you can come back later to join her. And she made the offer and I went up to her at the break and I was like, I'm in. It's like, I didn't know how, but I followed my gut. I had that feeling of like, I will regret this if I don't do it. And also, more importantly, I felt that connection with her, that she was the right person to help me. And I'd experienced it in that 3 days. And then I just knew that she cared. It wasn't a cookie cutter. There's all these reasons, but it was like, she's my person to help me. And 10 years later, I'm still with her, and because she's grown and evolved and changed and evolved, but she doesn't. That's helped me grow and evolve and change. And really, she keeps raising the standard, and I keep joining. And then the people who are in it, it's been a magical experience.
I love that. I love that so much. And so currently, you are, because part of what you were doing was you were helping people build events, run the events, build their database.
Yes.
And that was a big part of what you did. Do you still do that?
I don't. I actually did virtual summits was the model, and part of the email model that I taught, and is a way to build your email list. And I sold that business last year. So that's fun from an entrepreneur standpoint, that literally I sold like my process. My thing I built out of my head that I practiced and honed and refined. And then I was able to sell it to someone. So
that's amazing. Now, everyone has to hear, since you're in sales marketing world, they have to hear the very first thing you ever sold.
The flavor toothpicks. Yeah. How did you find that story? Oh my gosh. You are really good. That's the first thing that popped in my head. And I'm like, there's no way she found it out. She's like, yes, I had this business, old school, right? I was in elementary school. And back in the day at the pharmacy, they used to have these little vials flavored, I guess they're oils. They were oils, flavored oils, cinnamon, peppermint, wintergreen, whatever. So I took them and I would soak the toothpicks in them, and then I would sell them for a penny a piece, or I think it was like 10 for 5 cents. I don't know, I had a little package deal. I wrap them in tinfoil, and then I would sell them on the bus. I did not save it, which is such a bummer, because I remember making a little brochure.
I love it.
And then I got shut down by the man because apparently they didn't like me giving out scarf objects.
That's cool.
Which is a shocking amount of, what I want to say, not authority, but, we were wild back then.
Right. You're going to pick that thing?
Right. Of all, you got lawn darts we're throwing at each other, chemicals being sprayed on us and things, and my toothpicks are what we're gonna.
I love that. I love that story. It's so sweet and leads us into, what as a child, because that's not a common thing that children do, is try to figure out how to make a little money. What was the precursor that drove you to try to figure out how to make some extra money? What was your childhood like at that time?
No one's ever asked me that question either. It was pure necessity is the mother of invention. There's that quote. And I needed money. I mean, I grew up poor in Southern Ohio. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom was bipolar. We just didn't have things. And I think that was my young little way, before I could even babysit or do any of the other things that could earn you money. Mm-hmm. That was my way of like, I need to make some cash. So, but I feel for that girl selling for a penny a piece.
Right? Yes. One of my friends and colleagues here in Charlotte has a book called But Your Mother Loves You. And the title was based around her mother also had some mental health issues. And she grew up with the struggle of everyone around her trying to say, I know she's doing those things to you, but your mother loves you. So she grew up with this really scathing a concept of what love looked like. Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in a home that you grew up in with an alcoholic father and a bipolar mother for that child?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I made a whole show about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, because the other layer on there is that when I was 4, my brother, I have 3 older brothers, and they're 10, 12, and 14 years older than me. And so when I was 4, the middle brother, Danny, when he was 12, he's 10 and 12. Anyway, he was 12, I was 4, and he got killed in a car accident. And so this is 1973. And so, we didn't do therapy. We were a poor family in Southern Ohio. Nobody did therapy then anyway. And so everybody had to turn inward to deal with their wounds and what that meant. And I now realize it took me 50 years to figure this out, though, that had a massive impact on me, because it was like he was my protector. He was the one who really paid the most attention to me. And when he was gone and everybody had to sort things out, my parents also divorced when I was 3, and we were all with my dad. And so I really had to take on that I got to raise myself, and I've got to, my needs, I need to be the one that figures out how to meet them. Because my dad was a functional alcoholic. So, he wasn't, he didn't lose a job, but there was never money for things. It was always very tight, but always money for beer. I realized later, always money for that. And my mom, we went with my dad when they divorced. And so she was this kind of almost non-entity in my life. I only saw her once or twice a year when we would go visit. They lived in Indiana. We lived in Ohio. When I went, I didn't know who I would get. She was bipolar. And so it's like one time it would be like, oh my God, Leah, it's so great. Hug and kiss, tell me a hug. And then the next time it would be like, hi. And she'd sit in the corner and not look at me. So it's like with her, I didn't know what I was going to get. With my dad, I didn't know what I was going to get. He's drinking. So is he going to be angry? Is he going to ignore me? Is he going to pick a fight? And so I did a lot of, now I look at it, managing my situation and figuring out how to not to ruffle feathers, not to stand out too much in many ways. And then also I just got to take care of myself. So I'll sell the toothpicks. I'll make the money. From the time that I could babysit, I babysat, I had a paper route. Then I was, got a W-2 job. Then I worked at the mall. I have been figuring out a way to cover my needs for a long, long time.
Very inspiring how you chose to allow that story to play out. Have you ever taken your ACE score? Do you know what that is?
No, I don't know what that is.
You may have heard of it, the Adverse Childhood Events score.
No.
So, well, you probably will check off all the boxes, and this is going to be interesting for you to hear, because the ACE score is a predictor of whether or not, as a woman, you will have an autoimmune disease in your older age.
Oh, Okay. So a higher score on that is predictive.
Having these, yes.
I'm going to bet that I am a unicorn.
You may check all the boxes because we haven't heard your whole story. But this is just, coming full circle back to the beginning of this conversation. Because if you take the ingredients that makes your soup mixture you and put them in a different person that makes a couple different decisions, you don't have the lived experience that you have. Yeah. And that's the goal that I try to get people to understand is it doesn't matter. It does matter, but the ingredients that makes the soup mixture of you have the control of what that end product is. And that's what you've done with your life is you've taken all of these experiences and you've made space for, some of the words that you kept using were formula, curious, play, discerning. Those words are what gave you a different end result than other people have because as a body worker, it's interesting. We think that our story is so unique to us, but in reality, there's so many people in the world. There's a lot of people that have very, very similar stories. And often in this one about 6-month time frame, I had 2 clients that you could have thought they were sisters. They're almost the exact same body type. They both were overweight, about 60 to 80 pounds. They both had 4 kids. They were in troubled marriages. It was really, really, that's what I'm saying, really odd. All these very, very similar things. And their treatment protocols, I was very similar in how I approached their treatment protocols. One took all the advice that I gave them and recommendations and referrals, because I refer out all the time to different practitioners and professionals. She took it and ran with it. And within 2 months, she was a different person. Wow. The other person, she just wanted to come in for the body work, and that was all she was going to do.
Yep.
So at the end of those 6 months, her story was the same, if not worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with your story coming around to where you are today, and I'm sure you're going to write a book one day.
Yes, I got a few books in me. I did a show first. You had
to take it on the road first. Yeah, amazing. I feel like we could do a whole another hour and a half. We've gone way too long already.
I know. Yeah,
so no, it's fine for me. But to be able to take your mindset to a place where you just took yourself on a journey and not let it keep you in the same place. Because the journey is what made your expression of who you are today so different. You probably wouldn't have it any other way, right?
Of course. I'm so grateful. I am. And I'm not just saying that like I'm grateful for the past. No, I'm deeply grateful. I did notice this earlier in life that there were lessons that I learned and there were things that I took on because of my upbringing that some people never do, or that some people have a lifetime of pain trying to sort out. And I got those things early. And I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade the resiliency that I have, the knowledge that, I even see it in, not so much in clients, but a little bit sometimes in clients of people who I can't do this because of that, or, XYZ circumstance happened. And I'm like, well, who says that? And I noticed that I just naturally, but I've culled my skill at, I can take care of myself in any situation, in anything, in whatever you want to throw at me, I'll be fine. And having that at a really deep level allows me to show up in a much different way than even my younger self did. My younger self did not have that. So I've culled it over time. But my younger self was insecure and worried about things. And there was a time when I had asthma attacks and panic attacks and irritable bowel syndrome and, these other things that was a lot of anxiety. But it's like I figured out how to say, like, this is not the life I want to be living. How do I live a different life? And I learned this, and then I learned that, and then I tried this, and then I tried that. And I've just been very open to figuring that out along the way. And I really, really believe that everybody has that power. Everybody, whether you take it, a different story, but everybody has the power to change what their life is unfolding like.
In the fitness world, we call that getting in the reps. There's nothing magic about it. There's nothing special about me or you.
Nope.
I know you love comedy as well. It's getting up on stage and sucking and being a tourist, but getting back up the next night.
Back up on stage. That's right. Exactly right.
That is the magic sauce.
That's the magic. Yeah. And I started, part of that pendulum swing for me was the going to California, right? So I'm really, it's again, great that I followed that instinct to go there, because I remember when I ended up taking the sales job, I got into sales and marketing, and the owner of that company was very much into personal development. And so he was the one who turned me on to with Nightingale Conant. They had the catalog, and I got the tapes of Anthony Robbins, and I read Awaken the Giant Within and the Brian Tracy tapes. And, you know, you spend a lot of time in your car in Southern California. And so I would just pop those tapes in, because he suggested that as a way to expand your mind instead of listening to the radio, you know, or now we'd listen to a podcast, but these are the cassette version of podcasts, basically. And so that really started me to like awaken and say like, okay, wait, I've got more power than I realized that I did, and start to really hone it. And I've been on a journey with that ever since.
Did you ever go to therapy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
What age were you when you went to therapy?
I went to therapy in the late 90s, the mid 90s. Graduated law school in 94. I think it was like 94, 95. So where's my Lord, 30 years. So mid to late 20s. And I did it because when my grandmother passed, so my grandmother, my mom's mother, was very impactful on my life. And she was the one who, you know, we would go see her once or twice a year. When we go visit, we'd stay with her instead of my mom, since my mom was bipolar and kind of had her issues. Grandmother had like this very neat house. She had a full fridge. She had money for all necessities. She, as my brother said, taught us we didn't need to live our lives in chaos. And so going to her and being in her space and her energy was just so different from the world that I was living. And there's a part of me that kind of latched onto that. Like there's another
possibility.
Way. Yeah. There's another way. In which I think that's really important, because when you're growing up and when you're younger, you don't know that your way is not the only way. And so I saw that glimmer, and then, and that helped me kind of hold on to that. So when she died, it threw me, because she was such a connection to a different way of being. And that threw me into a depression. And then I had a friend who I was starting to have some anxiety attacks, and my friend suggested that I go see a therapist. And I remember the point of our very beginning of the conversation, she said, "Do you want to go on antidepressant?" I can't remember what. And I said, no. And she said, "You'll progress a lot more quickly if you do the medication route. It'll be, you know, a month or two or whatever, instead of 6 months or whatever." And I said, "I'll take the 6 months. Like, I would rather just
earn it,
do the process than mask it." I don't know how I knew how to do that. Like, I don't know how I knew.
It's the underlying theme that you have of the discernment. And as a child, being able to look at I have this very similar story, looking out and seeing, okay, if that person did it, I can do it. Maybe not now, but I can.
Yeah.
So being able to have that discernment and have the self-control to know, like, I can't change my circumstance right now, but when I get to be the one making the decisions and I get to be the one choosing what path I take, that's how you have the outcome that you've had.
Yeah.
With no regrets.
With no regrets.
Yeah. Tell us about what you're doing now with everybody and helping them build a life of no regrets.
Yeah. So my whole work is, I call the no regrets formula, which is a 6-pillar process. And it's the one that, like I said, when I kind of look back over my life, read all the journals, I realized there's a process that I'm following that I've been able to codify. And so I help women, mostly women. I work with men too, but mostly women who are over 45, who are kind of in that space of life where they're like, okay, I put a lot of time into my family, my career, my this, my that, my the other. And now they're going like, is this really the life that I want to lead. Am I doing this because I want to, or am I doing this because my spouse thinks I should? My mother
Or my
thinks
church
I should.
thinks I should.
My church thinks I should. And so they're at that question point. And part of what I help them look at is, first of all, releasing any past regret they have over actions taken or not taken. And then also like, how do we start living for you now? And how do we just tune into making sure that you're doing what you really want to do? And it can be as big as an Ironman or climbing Kilimanjaro or whatever. And it can be as, I don't want to say small, it can be as other as being the best mother you can be, being the best coach you can be, being the best spouse you can be, being whatever. It doesn't have to be this earth-shattering, I'm going to leave my life kind of thing. It could just be that little shift that, but approaching it from a different way and from a different filter that helps you do it. So I work one-on-one. I have a no regrets, no limits weekend. That's like a 3-day process where we really focus in on who you've been, where you are, where you want to go, and we create a nice 90-day plan for getting there. And then I have an ongoing program as well. So
amazing. Now you're in Chicago, correct?
yes.
Is that 3-day weekend in person, or is it like a?
It's virtual, so
Okay.
you get to do it from anywhere. Yeah.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Last question. So you mentioned that you don't have any children, you don't have a partner right now. We've been talking about being curious, being playful. I have words down here like, I think you're just a vagabond, you're a wanderer, you have this free spirit, and this your freedom is very important to you. Is there a potential in your life for a partner in crime?
Yeah. I would love that. Actually, tonight I'm going to a singles event, so we'll see.
I love it.
But I would love, I've always wanted that and held space for it in different ways. And I'm a big believer that it happens when it's going to happen, right? If there's nothing else I've learned in the world, it's that there's a better plan, and whatever I think my timing needs to be, I need to just give that up and let the universe orchestrate its magic in its timing. So yeah.
When you find that right person, they will tell you they've been looking for forever and that they are very, very blessed to have you. So what events do you have coming up, or is the 3-day thing, and the coaching's always available, correct? Or do you have a time frame on the no limit, no regrets?
Yeah. So the one-on-one coaching, I can start that at any time. The no regrets, no limits weekend, the next one is in May. And then the one after that is in September. So I do them 3 times a year. And I often, if somebody's like kind of in between, we can do some one-on-one work in addition to this 3-day. I'm pretty flexible with that. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to leave us with? Any word of encouragement for all of us ladies going through this midlife transition? And let us know how exciting it can be. And
well, it's interesting. I turned 56 in December, and this birthday has hit me a little harder than the others. Mm-hmm. And I've been talking with friends, and I've come to the fact that since it's a 6, it's a little closer to the next 0.
Yeah.
And that feels a little different. And I know we can do anything at any time. And there's so many people that,
reality.
But I have that feeling of the runway ahead is shorter than the one behind. And I just this week talked to a client who gave me this great framework that I'm going to share with you guys because it really lit me up. She said, LeeAnn, when your battery on your phone is at 45%, you don't freak out. You go, I got 45% left. And I was like, snap, you're right. Like, I don't worry till it's down to like 5%.
Right.
Like 56, whatever. Okay. I'm
burning it both ends.
I'm burning it right. And now I have the confidence and the resources and the processes and the tools in my toolbox to deal with things I had never dealt with before, to experience life in a new way and to have much richer experiences than I've had in the past. So let's go, man.
100%. Well, I'm so thankful that you spent a little bit of time with me today and you shared your story with everyone. And like I said, you're just a shining example of where you can take your life, and just a few little decisions here and there make a totally different outcome than what they could be. And go take your ACE score. I'd love to know what it is.
I know. I totally wrote that down. I'm very curious about that.
Again, thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great event tonight. And we look forward to seeing all the wonderful things you're going to do in the future. And for your next book or for your first book release, we'll, of course, be sharing all of that information. But again, thank you, LeeAnn, so much.
Thank you. This has been fun. I appreciate it.
Great night.